President Truman's dramatic announcement that Russia has created an atomic explosion sends reporters racing for Flushing Meadow, where Russia's Vyshinsky arrives to address the United Nations.
September 23, 1949. President Harry Truman informs the world that the United States has evidence that Russia has successfully developed and tested an atomic bomb. The whole world was shocked because, according to British and American intelligence prediction, Soviet Russia will not be able to successfully develop a nuclear weapon until at least 1953. The Soviets' secret has been found, and their instant success sent the old world into a new era, the Cold War. But how did they got here in the first place? Well, let me give you a story. When Russia started the atomic bomb project, Americans and Britons had already made significant research on the topic, and together they were working on the Manhattan Project. In addition to knowledge from Russian physicists and scientists, the Soviet Union launched a massive intelligence gathering both in the United States and the United Kingdom on the knowledge around the nuclear bomb. And this is where things get interesting. Industrial espionage in the Manhattan Project greatly aided the speed of the Soviet nuclear program. For many years, the depth of spying of the Soviets in the United States and United Kingdom was unknown. But the Soviets are said to have known about the existence of Manhattan Project since 1941, a year before it was commenced. At the time, even the FBI had no knowledge about it. This was a network of spies, and information flow to the Soviets from the United Kingdom and United States. The story begins in the United Kingdom. While studying in the Cambridge University, John Cairncross and Donald Maclean, together with their other three friends, became passionate communists. Together, they would later be recruited by the Soviets as their spies until at least 1950, forming the Cambridge 5 spy ring. After school, Cairncross became a secretary to the chairman of British Scientific Advisory Committee. At this position, he had access to high-level reports, and in 1941, the report on feasibility of uranium bomb passed through his hands. As a spy, he promptly linked the information to the Russian agents. In 1951, Cairncross and members of Cambridge 5 were interrogated. Cairncross accepted that he had been a Russian agent after documents in his handwriting were discovered in a suspect's apartment. But Cairncross was not jailed. He was asked to resign from his position and to keep quiet. He was questioned again in 1964, and he admitted to spying for Soviets against Germany in World War II. Donald Maclean was another member of the Cambridge 5. Around the time when Cairncross sent the message to Russian handlers about the potential of a nuclear bomb, Maclean also sent a word of potential for atomic bomb. In 1947, Maclean served as a British liaison in Atomic Energy Commission. Harry's father, Samson, was a cabinet maker, and his mom did not have a job. Both came from Switzerland. Gold was recruited as a Soviet spy by Jacob Gals in November 1935. His first task was stealing information from a company he was working for the benefit of the Russian people, who, according to his conclusion, based on the stories he had outlawed discrimination of Jews. Over time, Gold became an important figure in the spy network. His contact officer was Semyonov. Mr. Semyonov was a recruiter of Russian spies in the United States. Gold eventually left his job as a chemist to fully focus on spying work. He was always busy as a carrier, and in the summer of 1942, the station began paying him $100 monthly to supplement his income. From that time, Gold met Semyonov twice per week, where he would deliver the latest information from other scientists working in Los Alamos. Harry Gold was arrested on May 13, 1950, based on the confession of Klaus Fuchs. He was charged with conspiring with others to obtain secret information for the Soviet Union from Klaus Fuchs. This is how Harry Gold was successful. Gold was a contact person for Klaus Fuchs, a primary physicist on the Manhattan Project and a lead scientist at Britain's nuclear facility by 1949. Based on the decryption of Venona 1944 message, just a few weeks after Russians detonated the first atomic bomb, it was revealed that information describing important scientific processes relating to construction of atomic bomb had been sent from the United States. The culprit? It was Klaus Fuchs. Klaus was born in Germany, and as a student, he became a communist. He would flee to England in 1933 and became a British citizen by 1942. At the time, he had already contacted Russian spies and volunteered to work as a spy. At first, he offered his service to Soviet intelligence while still in the United Kingdom in 1941 regarding to atomic bomb research. When he was transferred to work at Los Alamos in Manhattan Project, he was assigned to Theoretical Division. He then began handing over detailed information about the bomb construction, including sketches and dimensions. His contact person was Harry Gold, who would then pass written information to Semyon Semyonov. On his first contact with Fuchs, Gold described Fuchs as, "He obviously worked with our people before, and he is fully aware of what he's doing. He is a mathematical physicist, most likely a very bright man to have such a position at his age." Fuchs was around 30 years at the time. In 1946, he moved to the British Nuclear Research Facility. Here, he passed detailed information on creating a hydrogen bomb to the Russians. When he was found and questioned in 1949, Fuchs confessed to being a spy. He was then sentenced to 14 years in prison. Klaus Fuchs died in 1988 while in Germany. Julius Rosenbach, born in 1918, and his wife, Ethel Rosenbach, was born in 1915. Both were devoted communists. The couple met as members of Young Communist League. They got married in 1939 and had 2 sons. Julius was an engineer for the US Army Signals Corps, and by the end of the World War II, he was heavily involved in the military-industrial espionage, both as a source himself and as a ringleader of a network of like-minded engineers who were dispersed through the country. However, Julius never worked in the Manhattan Project himself and had no knowledge in the atomic bombs. Ethel, Rosenbach's wife, had a brother named David Greenglass, who was also a member of the Communists. David was an army machinist, and in the summer of 1944, he was briefly assigned to Oak Ridge. A few weeks later, he was transferred to Los Alamos, where he worked on implosion as a member of the Special Engineering Detachment. Using his wife Ruth as a conduit, Greenglass began funneling information regarding the atomic bomb to his brother-in-law, Julius Rosenbach, who then turned it over to Soviet intelligence. In his later confession, David Greenglass said that his wife Ruth did the typing of the information from the documents he brought from Los Alamos. In March 1946, David Greenglass left the army, but the Soviet intelligence had not got enough of him. They urged him to enroll at the University of Chicago in order to re-enter the atomic research. The Soviet even offered to pay his tuition, but Greenglass' application to Chicago was rejected. When Klaus Fuchs was arrested in 1950, his confession led to arrest of Harry Gold, who in turn confessed to have worked with David Greenglass. When confronted, David Greenglass confessed, implicating his wife Ruth and his brother-in-law Julius Rosenbach in order to reduce his sentence. Julius and Ethel Rosenbach both maintained their innocence and refused to cooperate with authorities in order to lessen their sentences. David Greenglass received a sentence of 15 years, but his wife was never formally judged. The Rosenbachs were sentenced to death. Authorities apparently hoped to use that sentence as leverage to get them names, but the Rosenbachs maintained their silence. Despite worldwide campaign for clemency, Julius and Ethel Rosenbach were executed on June 19, 1953 on electric chairs. For almost half a century, Fuchs was believed to have been the most significant spy at Los Alamos, but Venona declassification later revealed another spy, Theodore Hall. As a Harvard graduate at the age of 18, he was assigned to Manhattan Project when he was 19. Unlike Rosenbach and Greenglass, however, Hall worked on the experiments for the bomb that was dropped in Nagasaki. the same type of bomb that the Soviets detonated in 1949. While growing up, his brother advised him to drop the family name so as to escape anti-Semitism. Such harsh realities pushed young Hall to communism, and in 1944, he contacted the Soviets and volunteered to give them information on the bomb research. In December 1944, Hall, with the help of his carrier, who was also his college colleague, Saville Sachs, delivered his first atomic secret from Los Alamos. It was an update on the creation of plutonium bomb. The FBI turned the spotlight on him in 1950 while he was working on his PhD. Apparently, his real name had surfaced in a decrypted telegraph message, but Harry Gold, who was already in prison at the time, could not identify him as a man other than facts that he had collected the secrets from, so he never went on trial. After his career in radiobiology, Hall moved to Great Britain and worked as a biophysicist until when he retired. When Venona project was finally declassified in 1995, he confirmed his spying 5 decades prior. He explained his motivation in written message. It seemed to me that the American monopoly was dangerous and should be prevented, and I was not the only scientist to make that view. So, the Soviet espionage around Manhattan Project is probably the most successful one in history. The Japanese and Germans also tried to penetrate the Manhattan Project, but they were always quickly found. Most of the Soviet spies in the United States were ideologically motivated, and most of them offered to work on voluntary basis. As the United States Department of Energy states, the Communist Party of United States of America had thousands of members in the country, disproportionate of whom were highly educated and likely to work in sensitive wartime industries. So when the Soviets needed information, they did not lack recruits for their spying mission. Preventing information leakage to the Russian was virtually impossible.